inyong lahat. Ngayon po ay ating kakapanayamin. I'm not really good in Tagalog too, so originally, from Cagayan, Ibanag. So anyway, we're going to have a chat, a conversation with our friend, Maricar, but her full name is Christina. Well, the real name is Christina. Anyway, we know all about these nicknames, no? So, Chris, do I call you Maricar or
You can call
Tina?
me Maricar because it's the Pinoy
Maricar.
audience eh.
Yes. Okay, sige.
Yes,
Alright.
yes,
Hello,
yes.
Maricar. Kumusta?
Okay naman. I'm good, I'm good. So, pareho tayong nasa Nelson. So, we're both
Ah,
in Nelson. So, at least we're South Island ladies.
yes.
I'm good, I'm good. Thank you, Didit, for inviting me.
Yeah. So, tell us a little bit more about your journey, from the Philippines to here. Kasi, yun nga, yung earlier conversation that we had, you came to New Zealand at a later age, and there will be others who would be maybe thinking about the same thing. Like how can they come to New Zealand even at this sort of time in their lives? So, tell us your story. Start from where in the Philippines
Ah,
kasi madami as in very interesting yung which we're going to be tackling and
sige,
discussing.
sige.
All right,
We'll do
sige.
parang where I am and then flashback. Parang
All right,
ganon, diba?
okay. Yeah.
So, so my husband and I, both Filipinos, we run a retreat center in New Zealand, in the South Island of New Zealand, 2 hours away from the resort of Didith. So Didith is in Blenheim, Marlborough, which is beautiful, beautiful from the wine, the richness of the soil and all that. Kami naman, we're further down Nelson, closer to the Tasman and West Coast. So it's really about the forest and the water. So just a bit of background, my husband and I are yoga teachers. We run Urban Ashram Yoga in the Philippines. It's 11 years old this August. That was
Congrats.
primarily, yeah. So it's more than it survived, and we're a
More than
digital,
a decade.
yeah, more than a decade in the pandemic. And
Yeah.
so we run a digital studio. So I think fundamentally, I'd like to describe ourselves as maybe nature teachers. I think that's kind of like more of where we've always found our passion and our interest that ends up like you becoming a business, di ba?
Mm.
Parang oftentimes most people will always look for businesses that are just fundamentally good in paper. I think me and my husband was always about what is your passion, and trust that the learnings, the education, the experience you've had in the other half of your life supports
Mm.
that dream, no, that business. So going back, I studied in Ateneo and I went to college and I became a banker with Citibank for I think 11 years. And then I moved to Australia to run a loyalty program for a Hong Kong based company. And I was manager, interestingly enough, in 2000 for Australia and New Zealand. This was 22 years ago. And I came to New Zealand and it was really bush. Like literally Auckland was bush. So that was in 2001 and I handled American Express. So I think that constant exposure to international travel and work, both from personal and professional, made me realize there's a world out there that Filipinos like you, like me,
Mm.
are willing to explore.
Mm.
Parang yung pagka-curious natin,
Mm.
parang makikitikim ka ng pagkain ng ibang tao, makikipasok ka ng bahay ng ibang tao to see how they live. There was always this genuine curiosity to see how the other lived and to
Mm.
see as Filipinos, how can we adapt? So there was always that, but it was always parang bakasyon.
Mm.
So what brought us to New Zealand was this desire to explore a new life for me and my children and my family together while we could still find the energy for change.
Mm.
Kasi we always knew naman that when you move to a new country, it will take a lot from you, like a lot. Like,
Yeah.
but your psycho, your physiological changes, the diet changes, the air, the way your skin reacts to pollen.
Mm.
Alam mo yon, there's this whole fundamental physical change, and then yet there's so much mental, emotional change at the same time. So I think my whole life is always driven by curiosity and exploration, but it always built on whatever I learned in the different parts of my life. So I was a banker, I was a shoemaker, I paid my way through college by selling shoes and bags. that started my entrepreneurial side.
Marikina ba yan? Marikina shoes ba? Hindi naman.
San Mateo, Rizal.
San
So
Mateo.
I found a shoemaker na kasundo ko na pareho kami mag-design, kumbaga.
Ah,
So and then life takes over. You have 3 children, your wife, you own a yoga studio, you own a gift. I owned a corporate gifting business for 19 years.
mm,
It was called Gift Solutions, and then I moved when I felt that my husband and I were ready to take a challenge.
mm,
And I think at the time because wala pang pandemic noon eh. So ang reason mo to leave, kailangan talaga visionary.
mm,
Like you have an imagination of what an imagined life with me because you're giving up so much. I lived a very comfortable,
mm.
sheltered life.
Yeah.
Um, I was raised by all my lolas, my titas, my pinsans, my tita still here with me in New Zealand. So parang super Pinoy
Oo,
rin.
sheltered life.
Sheltered kasi kasama mo palagi tapos pupunta ka dito sa New Zealand na
No
wala
one.
kang kamag-anak, 'di ba? Tapos wala kang, in a way, katulong, meaning
Yep.
help.
Yeah.
So that's my journey. My journey really was a sense of understanding that perhaps what I wanted to learn and to teach my children was self-sufficiency. Was that no matter who you are as a woman, as a man, that you can actually stand on your own and yet be supported by an entire Filipino community. That sense of being yourself and finding your own worth defined by you. You're in control, not by society. And yet you still have the Filipino values and community there to remind you of where you came from. So kind of like that's my story. Nothing dramatic. I think it was just more, um, an imagined life becoming real.
Mm. So you said you went to Auckland. So Auckland was where you started your life in here
Yeah.
in New Zealand.
Yeah. So the first year we all went to school. I went back to college. I went to I took a course in brand communications, a postgraduate degree. So I went back to college. I was 46 and my classmates were all 18 to 21. Pero okay lang kasi yung teachers ka-age ko. So, alam mo yun, saka ako yung best student. Lahat ng color coordinated na ball pen, notebook, sitting in front with the notes. I'm always early. Yung mga gusto
When was
kong
that?
ginawa.
When was this?
2017. So I went to
17.
Auckland University of Technology. I took a brand communications course. So
26.
I took a whole year, and then that year, my children also moved into middle school and junior school. My eldest was already in the Philippines. Yung eldest daughter ko stayed behind in the Philippines because she was 20 plus na. So when my husband became a pilot. So that year he studied also to be a pilot. So all 4 of us went to school. So that was our way of adjusting, and I think that was in purposefully so that we could get educated and immersed. Plus I wanted to be with young people. That's all I really wanted to be, was how do I start again with that youthful energy, which I had so much because of my yoga. Like I can tell you, because of my yoga, I am so much more energetic than I was when I was 20 or even
All right.
16.
That's this. We'll touch on that because you've invited me to one session. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my god, how can you do all this? But anyway, well, let's go back to that later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we started out in school. So
Yeah.
basically it was the perfect way to start a life, is to learn again. So and you really learn, I guess what it is sobrang humbling. Talagang you realize you're not as mabilis. Hindi ka kasing talino ng akala mo. Alam mo 'yon, or hindi ka gano'n ka maabilidad, So, but it's humbling, but then you learn again. So I felt that that was a good way. And then I started teaching yoga locally in retirement homes here, which was my way of connecting with the audience I wanted to. Kasi when I was teaching in urban ashram in the Philippines, you're really, really teaching mostly, people who come there because they really want to be fit, or, talagang tutok. But I went for the special populations. I went for the retirement homes kasi that was my genuine interest. I
It's
really
going,
have
I
this.
think that's just really is showing, what you said earlier about your visionary, instinct and thinking. Yung
Yeah,
visionary.
yeah, yeah. At
Yeah.
saka interesado ka eh.
Ah,
Yung kasi parang when you start learning again, when you start realizing na kaya ko pala to write a 10,000 page thesis. Alam mo 'yon? 'Di ba? So, kaya mo pala to do that 10,000 page thesis, submit it and still get an A. Then iisipin mo, okay, then I can totally things up. You know, the confidence that you have
mm,
from just fulfilling something that you think you couldn't do anymore.
mm.
So, yun yung way I started here.
All right. Okay. So yoga. So you started, and then how did this retreat resort lecturing resort came about? So
Yeah.
2017. Yeah, we started. You
2017 we
studied
started.
with
Yeah.
you and family. So
And then we're winding down our business in the Philippines. We had a business called Easy Adventure. It was an eco glamping resort. Um,
ah,
it was off grid. It's if you're familiar with the movie Apocalypse Now,
yeah.
the scene Charlie Don't Surf, because that's where the birth of surfing was in Charlie's Point in Baler.
Mm,
So that property, that 3.5 hectare property is ours.
mm,
So my husband and I invested in that property about 25 years ago. And so we built an off-grid resort. So no kuryente,
mm,
tents, but with beds.
mm.
We did yoga retreats. We did photography workshops. So there was a semblance of what we're
Uh,
doing now.
yeah.
But and it was our way of introducing Filipinos to nature. Kasi ang
Mm.
Pinoy hindi naman nagka-camp, di ba? So,
Oh,
syempre, pag magka-camp ka, at least alam mong yung
probably ako
tutulugan.
yung exemption kasi nagma-mountaineering ako dati sa Philippines, so we sleep in the mountains.
Oo, hindi. Kaya ka nga na nasa New Zealand eh. Di ba? I
Correct.
mean, di ba? It may
Uh,
may certain affinity sa
mm,
nature. Meron naman sa atin. Ang ano lang naman is ang sa Pilipino, hindi lang sanay.
oo.
It's not that hindi kaya niya. Hindi lang siya na-expose. Eh syempre, kakagatin ka ng lamok, mamamatay ka pa. Alam mo yon. So
Yeah.
syempre, iniisip mo, bakit ako lalabas?
Mm,
Mamamatay pa ako, di ba? So here, it was our way of saying that it's safe to go out into nature. You just have to know, respect it, respect nature. So that was our foray. We were winding down our business. And then we found this property in the South Island that also matched the kind of living philosophy
mm,
and our way of thinking about stewardship of a land. Because
mm,
we've always respected the land. I
mm.
think that was the unifying ethos between me and my husband, is that we have absolute respect for the pristine
Nature.
ecological nature of the land, that we're lucky to be living in such rich resources. So that was it. And then it opened as a luxury lodge. So we made it as an investment into luxury.
Mm,
But nagka-pandemic. So we lost a ton of money and we had to let go of everybody we trained. And my husband and I had to run it ourselves. And that's how it became a yoga retreat, because you go back to yourself and say, ano pa kaya mo? Ano kaya mo na pwede mong pagmamalaki na pinag-aralan mo at nakatulong sa ibang tao, 'di ba? So,
mm,
ang
mm,
iniisip mo, the only thing that's made me survive and get me this far is my practice and support from people. So you go back to the Filipino culture, which is, self-sufficiency and community. And
mm.
so that's how we started, and that we opened again in the winter, just two of us. We ran a retreat called and we sold out both retreats. So we said, uy,
merong ano, may
mayroong nag
niche. May niche. Yeah.
may nag-appreciate,
Mm,
meron tayong ibubuga
mm,
na enjoy sa kanila. They're willing to pay the value of that. So that's how it started. And since then we've ran retreats. And the nice thing is it's been so enriching to meet Kiwis. Kasi this is a very, very rare opportunity in the history of New Zealand where you're meeting your own citizens, where you are here to impress your fellow citizen, where you're here to want to give the best to the people who live around you and show them what you can offer this world. So it's such a rich exchange. And yoga is such a non harmful, or I'd like to say least harmful approach to get to know nature, because it's such a natural thing to move with the breath, which is what we do in the lodge. It's all natural healing modalities, which is really the best thing. So yun, dun siya nanganak.
Wow. So when was that? Like, so when you started, you bought the property mga
We bought it
20
November 2018, and then
2018.
nagbukas kami ng test run ng July 2019. We ran a season ourselves with a few of the staff with top inbound tour operators. We tested it on people who had a high standard, and they said we passed. So nagbook October. And then nagka-pandemic ng March. O di ba iyak ka? Iyak ka talaga. Hindi lang iyak, talagang
No, but
di
actually
ba?
it was as you were saying, I think it probably was a blessing in disguise too. Kasi you can see, from what you're saying, ngayon you've actually found, what's the best, sort of operating, this, kung ano yung concept, kung ano yung parang business model, kung ano yung offering, as you were saying earlier, yung mga tao na you're wanting to give back, and for people who, the guest ninyo na to appreciate ano yung nature, and what you were also like connecting it up to what you have had back in the Philippines too. No.
Yeah. No, you know what I remember so much is that the Filipino is like the halo-halo dessert. Diba? It's such a mix that what we fundamentally put out there as Filipinos is really so universal, because it's such a rich history of European colonization, local, like the Maori, something so endemic that is of the land. I think that's why now we have so much respect for the land, because we're, land and water. Filipino is a seafaring, land-based community. So it's just so natural for us. So yes, in hindsight, alam mo naman maganda lang sa hindsight, di ba, na buhay, I mean, we're both alive. We're still both running a resort. Exactly 2 years. If you think about it, when did the pandemic happen? It's exactly 2 years next week. So the fact that we're having a conversation, we're still alive, and we're still trying to make something of it shows the resilience that we have. So it wasn't easy. It's still not easy. In fact, I actually think because we have less energy and more trauma, we have to be very mindful of how we use our energy. And that's why I was saying it's so important to know that even me, I'm now 50, right? So I'm no spring chicken. I mean, even if mentally and physically I feel like I'm 16, the reality is I'm not.
Correct.
And also resources are so finite. I mean, we got wiped out. I mean, we all got wiped out. So what it is you have to just be so smart about where you use your energy. So ngayon, alam mo, nasa peak tayo ng pandemic, di ba? Pero nag-uusap tayo, nagpaplano at masaya pa rin. Pero I think what it is we've had to recalibrate. So I'm at the stage where I've just reset. Like literally tinanggal ko lahat ng books sa bookshelf ko. Tapos iniisip ko ngayon kung ano yung babasahin ko at ano yung mga libro na ilalagay ko doon. Yung mushroom book mo, lalagay ko doon. Mag-aaral tayong dalawa. Alam mo yun? So, iniisip ko kung ano. Mushroom hunting tayong dalawa.
So, yung sa ngayon, so ano yung, para lang malaman ng ating mga nanonood o nakikinig, so ano yung offering ninyo sa ngayon dyan sa
Sige.
sa resort?
Gagawan ko ng parang telenovela storya.
Sige.
Okay, since Filipino naman yung mga audience natin, I think ultimately nare-realize ng Filipino how beautiful nature is. I after being cooped up in their homes, you notice lumalabas na sila sa mga friends natin, pupunta na sila sa mga Masungi Reserve, nagka-camping na sila, they're going to rivers, there's a sense of adventure, which is good because they converted their energy from fear into discovery. So that's where we're taking off from Maruya River Retreat. So it's called Maruya, Maruia. It means shelter. So it actually means to protect. So it's a beautiful spot. And the idea is that you feel safe when you get here. We're by the highway, so you're not like,
Malayo.
may kalye. Nandiyan ang kalye. Nasa highway kami. But it's a 500-acre nature estate. So you can get lost
Mm. Mm.
within steps from your villa. It offers you a nature escape that gives you the mountain ranges. So you have the beautiful pine trees and the native beech forests on the ground. You have 5 creeks, so traversing spring water, which is from the Southern Alps. So you can imagine how fresh the spring water is. When people ask me, bakit ayaw mo mag-makeup or hindi ka na nagme-makeup ngayon? Umiinom lang ako ng tubig na malinis, na full of goodness and life. You know what I mean? So you just drinking water, it shows in your skin. So the water and then the river is where we have catch and release, but it's one of the best fly fishing places for brown trout.
Wow.
And then we have, of course, the forest, which is native New Zealand, and this is beach. This is beach, Beech, which is an old,
Daming
old.
mushroom dyan, daming mushroom sabi.
Ang dami mo makikita kasi nga endemic. So but what we have is also the luxury of nature. So we put an outdoor hot tub, a beautiful hot tub by the river. So when you look up, you're in between trees, so you can look up to the sky and to see the stars. We have an outdoor sauna that's close to it, so you would do hot, cold,
Mm.
hot, and you can even go to the river and you
Mm.
can dip in the river, which I felt was such an awakening. It was my first time ever to dip my entire head in the river last month. Para akong binaptize. Yun yung feeling ko. Alam mo yon,
Nice.
parang sino ba naliligo sa ilog, 'di ba? I mean, yung
Malamig ka New
pamilya ko,
Zealand. Malamig
malamigan New
dito.
Zealand, 'di ba? Pero sabi ko hindi. I mean, it reminds you of, our ilog sa Pilipinas. Iisipin mo lang nandun ka na mainit, 'di ba? And then you have the yoga every day, which is a choice. So
Mm.
our yoga is at 8 in the morning, and then breakfast is at 9:30, which is a
So yung
continental.
yoga, kayo ni nung husband
Kami
mo.
ni Lasse ang nagtuturo. So it's either me or him who teaches. And because you're here for 3 or 4 days, you actually go through a very therapeutic movement practice.
Nice.
So, and because we don't know your background and we don't never met you before, we always teach it. And iba-iba kayo. 'Di ba? Kahit mag-asawa kayo, iba yung needs nyo.
Mm-mm.
So we often break the classes into 2 so that you'd have a private experience because dalawa kaming teacher eh.
Mm.
And then you have the whole day of going around nature trails. So we have about 11 kilometers of it. They used to be previously Department of Conservation trails, but because we're a private forest right now, so we still keep the trails. And then we have a kitchen garden, which you can pick your fruits from, and that's where the food comes from. And every night
Nice.
you get a fresh meal. So what I mean, every day is different, but
Mm.
we're omnivore. So you can eat, like tonight I'm having lamb, but you can also choose to be vegan,
Mm.
because we have so much vegetables anyway. So there's just a whole range, but they're all healthy, meaning the right proportions because we know what you did the whole day. So I think what it allows you to do is in 3 to 4 days is to actually rest the nervous system. It's a fundamental, immediate effect on your psyche,
Mm.
on your physicality. Your body will feel great. And the third thing is you did it all by yourself. Wala
Mm.
naman kaming ginawa. Nag-attend ka ng class,
Mm.
nag-hot ka,
Mm.
naglakad ka, kumain ka
Mm.
ng masarap,
Parang,
natulog ka.
parang nag-ano ka, personal detox ka.
Yeah, and it's a natural detox because we're not putting you on a diet. You're just feeding yourself with nourishing food.
Yeah.
And can you imagine just the breathing process? Remember how much oxygen you're taking from this native beech forest. There's over how many thousands of trees that are giving you oxygen, and then they're taking your carbon dioxide. Oh, can you imagine how cleansing that entire process is by just sitting there and doing nothing?
Punta na ako
So,
dyan next week.
oo nga. Ikaw rin naman, pareho lang naman hinihinga natin eh.
No, kasi yung sa'yo, yung dyan sa inyo talagang talagang nature. I really love nature kasi my husband and I used to be mountaineers back in the Philippines, so we always chased nature. So
O yan,
hindi
puntahan mo
yeah.
yung mga trails namin.
Yeah.
Ikaw yung magkwento ng trails. So I think what it is, it's a story of your exploration of the native New Zealand landscape. But it's all organized that you feel safe. And it's literally within steps of your villa. So you get the comfort of gusto ko na bumalik. You know what I mean? Hindi ka mawawala. Mainit na ayokong umitim.
Mga Pilipino, yung umitim.
Bumalik ka na sa lounge.
Iba, hindi naman lahat.
Hindi
Just
lahat, pero I mean, you know what I mean? Kasi,
yeah.
diba? Kasi, and fundamentally, it's also not good for you naman to be in the sun too long. So I guess that's what it is. Parang it's some people kasi think you have to have a list of things to do in order to make it a
Oo.
worthwhile vacation. But the reality is, if
You just need to reset, no?
you just
Stop.
para ka,
Stop.
I want to decide, I want to explain this like this is a really funny way of saying it, but para siyang theme park ng nature healing.
Nature.
'Di ba?
Nice.
Parang theme park, parang pupunta ka ng Disneyland, saan ka pupunta? Space World or pupunta ka sa Cars or pupunta ka sa Sleeping Beauty Castle. Pero dito pupunta ka sa maglalakad ba ako sa nature, maghanap ako ng birds and mushrooms, or I'm gonna stay in the hot tub, or I'm gonna get a massage. Yan yung mga choices.
Galing. Oh my gosh. You know.
Tapos Filipino
Oh,
hospitality
syempre.
with tapos all our teammates are all from town. So from rural New Zealand. So makikilala mo talaga yung taga Murchison.
Taga Murchison.
Oo, you'll get to meet the locals.
Awesome.
So,
We go back to the yoga kasi yun nga as I was saying earlier, you invited me to one class and I
yes.
did attend and I was like, oh my god, this is hard.
It is hard. It is hard.
It's really, akala mo madali lang. Oh, yoga. Okay, mag-yoga. But it was, oh my God, it was the hardest thing that probably I did. Despite me, I think that I am, healthy and agile and alam mo yun, yung parang kahit na 15 na ako, alam ko, parang katulad mo, I have a lot of energy. But when I tried that, I said like, this is hard.
No.
How did, tell us about yoga. I think,
Yeah. Okay, no, I really have to talk about it because I can tell you that if there was one thing that I would tell anybody who I loved, cared about, if they could start yoga when they were young, they should have. Because the exponential benefits, and it's a lifelong health choice. So first, yoga is hard because you're going to be placed in positions of your body that are very humbling. You know, the spectrum of movement of your body is so full of range, but because of our everyday habits, yung mga ginagawa mo, let's say everyday ka nagpupulot ng mushrooms, di syempre kukuba ka kasi yun ang ginagawa mo kung hindi ka mindful. Kung nakaupo ka sa desk mo buong araw, syempre yung hamstrings mo tight kasi nakaupo ka the whole day. So what yoga does is the first thing it really, unfortunately, makes you realize is that there will always be something to work on. But you survived it, right? And I would like to think that between you and me, I mean, I know you because you're an overachiever. Mga overachiever, the ego comes into play. And what I find is the ego, once you realize it, and I learned this through the practice, is you use the ego to be competitive to yourself. You know what I mean? You use it not to put you down, but you use it kasi nakikita mo yung self-talk mo eh. That's the thing about yoga. Yoga is a practice of self-awareness. So I came to yoga, I'll tell you why, because sobrang sakit my back. As in, I have scoliosis, so I have a lateral curvature of my spine. I would have sciatic pain. I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. My husband had spinal surgery because he went skateboarding in Australia and fell off a skateboard at 100 kilometers per hour and broke his neck. So we have had to build strength with yoga and release pain, but at the same time, it has empowered us. So if you really see yoga as a journey of the self in both a mind body connection, I think you will stay the course. I came to it because of back pain, but I am now using it as a self soothing tool. It is my ability to deal with my post traumatic stress disorder. I have so much anxiety because you can imagine, Didith, we have family in the Philippines. I have family in the US. So while we were sheltered in New Zealand from the realities of the pandemic, which not a lot of people recognize how lucky we are
Yeah.
to be, to not be firsthand exposed to the pandemic. And yet you and I as Filipinos live with our families in our hearts. Even if it's Zoom, we went through the pandemic with them. So we have all of that. And yet the only thing that's going for me right now is my ability to soothe my anxiety and build strength. So yung mga unang mafe-feel mo sa is humility. Pero there are different types. Tapos you'll meet different teachers and then you'll find your tribe. Ang ano ko is what I've learned with yoga is it has constantly allowed me to learn. If there's anything that it has taught me, the biggest benefit is that I can learn something again. So for me, kung yun pa lang, because I come from a family of Alzheimer's. So I have 3 generations of Alzheimer's. My mother just passed away last May 2021 from Alzheimer's. So I'm direct. And you can imagine my neurosis because of all the stress. So yoga keeps me in check. It keeps me aware that yes, fundamentally at my age right now, this is the early onset. So what is my behavior like? How do I react to stressful situations? Will it cause me more mental disease, or can I do something to stop it because I don't want my children to go through what I went through? I saw my lola, I saw my mom. I don't want to see my titas. And that's why I still teach in retirement homes because I want to learn how to deal. So I think that it's a good way at any age. And I'm so glad that my children, that even if they were exposed to it all their life and they don't want to do it because mom and dad do it, as adults, that's what they do. They chose to go. You know, they choose to meditate. They choose to take a yoga. They choose.
Yeah, hindi forced.
Hindi forced. But when did it happen? 20 years later, 17 years later.
Sila na self, ano na sila. You know,
But it's
they resist
there.
their own decision. Yeah.
Yeah, but they have the tools within them. And that's all you can do as a mother, right? Equip them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Oh my gosh. I
Secret
know. It's like,
siya. It's such a secret. It's such a, and there's chair yoga in Tagalog. If you go to the if you
kasi,
go to the Urban Ashram Yoga channel, there's about 7 videos of chair yoga in Tagalog. And the reason I take it is
chair
because I want,
yoga. So chair,
yes.
like you're doing yoga when you're
Yeah, on a
chair.
chair. Yeah, yeah. And it's
It's
easier.
not as hard as what I have
No,
experienced.
no. And it's
So,
in Tagalog. So
Tagalog pa.
makikinig ka talaga. And for me, who hasn't spoken Tagalog in a long time, it
That's
keeps the
refreshing.
language. Yeah, it keeps the language, and it's good Tagalog. It's University of the Philippines Tagalog.
Tagalog.
It's legit Tagalog. It's proper vernacular Tagalog.
All right. Hindi Taglish.
Hindi katulad ko. Ayun. So, ayan. Yun yung kwento.
Nice. So, ano pang ano, like what else? So currently, nandyan ka sa Murchison but you live in Nelson. So, kailan kayo na, because I know like Auckland ka before, like so recently lang kayo nag-move sa Nelson?
Oo. Pinagraduate ko muna yung daughter ko ng high school. So, that was very important for me as a mother to make sure that there was no more changes. You know, we moved from the Philippines. They've set up from the beginning. Talagang tiniming ko yun because 7 years old and 11, you know, so it was really the age of awareness. I was very mindful of the developmental aspect of the child. So even just moving them, so and making sure that they stayed with them. So it was a challenge for me in Lhasa because my husband and I were apart for 2 years. I mean, I had to be with the kids and he would come and visit. I would come, so, and then the pandemic locked us down, so we couldn't really go. So but as a mother, that was my commitment to make sure that I finished them off graduating. So my son graduated junior school. Like literally, we waited for the end, and then my 18-year-old daughter finished high school. So we were in Auckland, and then the minute she graduated, lipat na ako. Miss ko na yung asawa ko. So we moved to Nelson because we moved because of education. So we found an equivalent school from the Philippines because my children went on international baccalaureate school in the Philippines. So what you kind of want to do is, diba, you don't want to shake the nervous system. I mean, I should know this. I teach yoga, right? So you have to give the same similar way of teaching. So, and we could only find that in Auckland. Well, that was our research. Now that my son, who is a different way of educating, and he's really more Kiwi now because he came here when he was 7. I'm putting him now in a more local school. So even that thought process, kasi pwede rin naman we live in the lodge, but I really wanted to live in a place where we could establish ourselves again. Like where you base yourself from outside of business. Para may sarili kang buhay, diba?
So what is your day like? So walk us through. There's so much going on. So what does it look like?
I'll tell you the day. My ideal. It's different. No. But I can tell you what my day used to be like. But now I can tell you what it should be like because that's what I've done the last 3 days.
Awesome.
I told you, diba, na parang I'm on a 90-day sabbatical. Yeah, I really am resetting. So I always started my practice. So at 6 a.m. I joined my teacher's class in the US. So that's 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time the day before, which is 6 a.m. So it's a 90-minute class with her. And this is my teacher from 10 years ago. So that, and then you start, and then you wander off because you have all these good vibes, right? So you walk into the forest, and then everybody else wakes up, so you have breakfast together, and then I start my day. 9 o'clock I have to start my day. So either it will always depend on, I'm kind of like, Thursday is my creativity day. Friday is my pay the bills day, because you kind of want to pay suppliers on the weekend so they know they have money. So I also think, so I pay every Friday, and so I kind of like have every day a certain group of tasks I have to do, because I can't multitask anymore. I make mistakes if I multitask. So I have to now do focused work. So I have days of just pure creativity where I'm writing concept papers and program papers. There's a day I write all copy for my social media. There's a day where I look and change my website. So there's a task list that I have to do, but I always start with what is urgent and what is high impact. So that's always my tool. Like if there was something to do this whole week on Monday, what is high impact and urgent? Get that out of the way. Para by Friday, like today,
Relax.
I can just chat with you na lang, di ba? So I create my week, but because like you and I, we work 7 days a week. There's no day really that is officially rest. So you have to, which is I'm telling myself and telling you, is to find one, kung si God nga nag-rest ng 1 day, di ba? So I am finding which day after this pandemic will be my solid, do not do anything work day. Yeah. So it's a full day. So I work, and then I join I teach the 8:30 yoga class if it's my turn, or 8 o'clock yoga class, and then I join the lunch service and the dinner service of the guests always on weekends. So I serve from the kitchen, and I close the lodge so that they also know that it's time for everybody to rest. So usually me and my husband are the last ones. So also the staff feel na inaalagaan namin sila. So there's that sense of making sure that you begin the day and you end the day. So ikaw rin, sarado. And then I wake up again at 6. So I literally get 8 hours a day. I have to. And I make it a point. So, because I teach sleep, diba? I told you that's what I do. Every Thursday, I teach online in a studio in Auckland that is digital. It's called the School of Modern Meditation. I teach sleep. So last night, 8 o'clock to 8:45, I teach people to sleep. So in a way, that's why it's nice to be a yoga teacher. You have to
Because
practice what you teach.
yeah. So ano ngayon yung reset? I know that you said, is that the one day, like just one day, this is my my thing, or ano, like what are you thinking about your reset?
My reset theme is self-preservation. You know, I mean, I think that's the theme of your Super Pinay, that despite you, not despite actually, because we can do so many things, we burn ourselves at the same time. So it's really about balance. So the self-preservation is about choosing to say no because we always say yes. You know, we say yes to everything because it's such a Pinoy thing, mawawala ng opportunity. You know, it might go away and God is giving it to you. Why will God give it to you if you don't take it? But sometimes God makes you also discern. He's also testing whether you would choose, you know, the higher good versus the selfish ego to achieve. So I think my self-preservation is every moment I choose. I choose what I'm going to do. Is this necessary? Is it worth it? Am I tired? Should I rest? Where is the opportunity? Should I pursue it? If I pursue it, how much energy should I place? You know, so you ask, but at a certain point you say, tama na yan, pahinga ka na. So my reset is really about choice and choosing for me.
Nice. So I recall conversation that I had with my sister about self-love kasi yun nga yung parang masyado tayong busy, and we know like a lot of people now because of pandemic na realize na actually all these things is nothing, you know, like instantly whatever your status in life is, kapag ka ano na tamaan ka, or especially nung wala pang virus, wala pang ano yan, vaccination, no? Parang wow, meron akong, in fact, you know, my sister almost died of you know, of it as well back sa Philippines. So alam mo yun, yung ganyan na what you were saying about the, you know, the you know, stop, you know, listen to your body.
Yeah. I mean,
You know what, yung it's the importance of doing that in our lives. And I think from someone, you know, we had a conversation earlier, and I mentioned na like, oh God, the dami kong ginawa. Like, before, you know, I na burnout ako because I was just so involved in so many things until, you know, what can we do? But I think not overdo it. You know, there are things that we can do. You know, parang nga yung sinasabi mo kanina, there are things, you have to, you know, to just have that self-realization na kailangan mong gawin lang kung ano yung tingin, ano yung sinasabi ng ng katawan mo, ng body mo sa'yo.
oo, at saka ask yourself why. At saka, when you ask yourself why, spend time really listening to that answer. You know, like, why are you doing it? You know, and if it comes from a place of love, then there's no question you should do it, diba? But sometimes if it becomes too much, where it becomes resentment, you know, yung masyado ka nang mabigay, it's a very, I think there's something very important in your Super Pinay that I mean, I listened to your interviews, you know, the episodes that you came up with, and I think there's something very human that the Filipinos also really are special is, you know, we're such a cheerful nation. I mean, look at you and me, we're still smiling and doing that, no? But there's a fundamental understanding that we're carrying the emotion of a lot of people. That's why we're always so cheerful. That dala natin.
Resilience, ano? Sobra.
Oo, at saka
Resilience natin.
dala mo, kailangan masaya ka, hindi ka madrama kasi dala mo yung mood ng ibang tao. That goes both ways. But I think what's important is that to actually say that you need help. That was my biggest lesson. To actually ask for help because we're so proud. There's amor
Mm,
proprio. That's such a
mm,
Pinoy thing.
mm,
Amor proprio.
mm.
My grandmother already told me, wag kang uutang ng pera at wag kang uutang na loob. Like, imagine, I'm
Oh,
like
kasi utang na loob yan.
3 years old, ha? Sinasabihan ka ng ganyan. Alam mo, Carmen, ha? Sinasabi ko sa'yo. Kasi Maria Carmen.
Ah,
My lola's Carmen.
ah,
But my
ah,
mom called me Christina. So, Maria Cristina Carmen
Christina.
ako. Oo.
Ah,
But when I moved here, I chose Christina because I wanted to use my mom's name.
ah,
Parang my mom and my dad gave that name to me. So she would tell me that. And if you think about it, that gives you a sense of I always have to be strong. I always have to be magaling. Or if
mm,
I'm not magaling, tatahimik lang ako. But the reality is it's in our failures that we actually rise, di ba?
correct.
That's how we actually come out. So I think if just us Filipinas could be more honest with asking for help. You
Mm,
don't have to explain yourself. Like I found that when I finally, after how many years, decided to call my titas and bare my soul because
mm,
I lost my mother,
mm, mm, mm,
diba? And ask for, I don't have a mom.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
parang I finally asked for help. Like, I mean, and then you realize,
mm.
wow, they were just waiting for you to
That's
ask.
actually true.
And
Oh,
then all that anxiety
mm,
is gone. I can
mm,
tell you that
mm,
the healing was not the actual issue of the problem.
mm,
The healing was because they helped me. It was just that. They just helped me
mm. And
and I was healed. You know, because I asked for help for the first time in a long time. I
yeah,
said I can't do this.
so I'm just really struck by what you just said, Maricar, no? Kasi yung yung katulad nung sinasabi mo kanina, and I think this group, should also sort of look at how we can help each other. Yung alam mo yun, yung parang how we support
Yeah.
each other. Kung merong, something that you need, we're here, to sort of help. So, that, oh my God, I said like, oh, thank you. I think that's
Yeah.
a very,
And and it's a beautiful thing for people to know that you're not
mm,
always strong.
you're vulnerable. Yun
You're
nga,
vulnerable.
yeah, so that it's not just about you being able to do so many things all at once and things like that. It's also the ability to self-reflect and see what are your strengths, where are you, where, what help do you need, and then reach out. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's beautiful.
Well, you reached out to me.
Thank you.
So this in itself is like a healing thing because if you really think about it, it's just really the first thing is uncovering what's causing you
Mm,
suffering or pain. And then you realize that that pain and suffering is universal
mm, mm.
and that it can be healed by just somebody helping you.
Yeah.
Diba?
And sometimes
So,
it's even just the conversations you were saying, or even like kapag nag-uusap lang kayo ng, I've experienced a lot of those things. Like kapag ka nakikipagkwentuhan ako sa isang tao, I just feel uplifted.
yeah,
Kasi
yeah,
parang you connect, that sort of connection, helps you. Um, kung ano man yung nararamdaman mo, even if you don't ask for help, sometimes even just having that conversation, with
yeah,
someone
yeah,
really helps a
yeah.
lot. So,
Yeah, so redefining Filipina strength as also
mm,
accepting help and asking. I think asking is the first thing.
yeah,
Ask.
that was one of the questions, yung last na question ko na yung advice mo pa, you've just said it. Is there
Yeah.
anything else? I guess that
Um,
yung parang parting
I
words, for our Filipina women, especially those who are here in New Zealand, in a foreign
um
country, as a migrant woman. Yeah.
yeah, I think that I'll always bring it back to something natural,
Mm,
which is and I know this is a push towards yoga, but if you think about the breath, and I'd like to take this opportunity to explain it, no? Because when you take the breath, when you exhale, that is an immediate nervous system release of anxiety. So just knowing that you have the power to heal yourself with a fundamental understanding of your body, how your body works. As a woman, as a Filipina, we have so much strong genetic predispositions. We come from a line of fighters, of generations of colonial, influence, an education that is highly educated and American. I mean, meaning it's global. It's a global. I mean, we speak such good English. So we have to know that we have the ability to heal ourselves, but the answer is always really a self-awareness thing. So in the breath, when you exhale, the first thing you do is release anxiety, and that's, you'll start to feel just releasing. That's the first thing you do, is release, because you need space. The inhales are meant to bring energy towards you, so know that energy can be transformed. So the energy that you have, the anxiety, those ngarag,
Mm,
ngatog,
mm,
that's energy.
mm,
But if you convert that through the inhales, because you're taking oxygen and goodness in, so you slow down your inhales. But then the most important thing is the pause. There is a pause between the
mm,
inhale and the exhale.
mm,
And that's where you see things clearly. That's when the myriad of choices and clarity comes into play, where you see things exactly what they are. And in that moment, you can choose. So the power is for you to choose, but you have to be brave enough to see it first, which means you have to be brave enough to pause when you're empty and to pause when you're full. So that's all it is. Pause when you're empty, pause when you're
exactly.
full, and then you choose. So I only learned that because of yoga.
Beautiful. Ay, nung pinadala mo sa akin yung breathing exercises kagabi, I actually did that. And I did some sort of, meron kasi ako before na parang nag-enroll ako sa parang holistic, think yung mind, body, and food. So I enrolled in that. In a year's time, I've actually felt na I was so energetic. Yun, katulad nung hindi nga lang siya kasing nung yoga, but more of the thinking, the breathing, so yung parang tuturo niya sa'yo saan mo ilalagay, alam mo yun, you put it in your, ganyan. So parang you imagine everything. So I said like, oh my God, this is really, it's really good kasi parang you're able to visualize, a lot of the things na ituturo niya sa, daan mo sa diaphragm mo, idaan mo sa yung air, ilalagay mo dito, ilagay mo sa ganyan. So, which is unusual. I sort of haven't really experienced that before. So, so, nung pinadala mo ulit sa akin yung ginawa mo na breathing exercise, I said, like, yeah, I should be, doing this, a lot more. Yung ganun na breathing exercises, because it just helps you calm down and just channel, I think, the energy, the appropriate energy to where it's actually needed. And then yung breathing, yun sabi mo nga, that's really an excellent summation of, what you can do on a practical, level, like, yeah, the breathing exercises. So maybe we should
Yeah.
share that. We should,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
You can load it on your site.
yeah,
Because you have the raw file. I
yeah.
sent you the raw
Thank you.
file. So you have you can do what you want with it. I did that because my girlfriend, who like you,
Mm,
is full of energy, but then got stumped by COVID.
mm,
So parang I felt na, oh no, parang, you don't want her to sink so low. So you just have to know that the healing begins already.
mm,
You know what I mean? Like the healing. And then and that was inspired because my dad was one of the first ones who got COVID. He got his September 2020. He was in the ICU for 29 days.
mm,
And like a self-preservation, because I would only cry if I spoke to him on the phone, right?
mm, mm,
And you had to talk to doctors. Buti nang tatlo kami magkakapatid, so we shared the stress.
mm,
But what I could only do with him was to teach him how to breathe every day for 29 days. Kasi how
Yeah.
else how else can I spend time with him? 'Di ba? But he healed. Ito mo, survivor siya.
Mm. Mm. Ayun 'no, so 'yan marami ngayon kahit na sabihin natin yung sa Pilipinas na ngayon bumababa ang ano, but I think, even not for the pandemic, but your everyday sort of life 'no, yung breathing exercises will definitely share that. So Maricar, thank you very much. It's more than an hour nagkuwentuhan natin. Oh my God, that's really
I-edit mo na
awesome.
lang, i-cut mo na lang yung mga
Hindi,
hindi
ang
na.
ano kasi is that I want it more, parang raw, no filter. So kung okay lang sa'yo yun,
Of
that's
course,
how
okay lang. It's your
that's how I
show.
want.
Gawin mo rin siyang podcast kasi halos lahat nakikinig, 'di ba? Audio.
Ah,
Maganda
ah,
rin siya.
sige,
Oo,
sige.
sige. But thank you, Didit, ha. And I I I can only see where you can take it because it's really from the kindness of your heart you want to share. But also save some for yourself, ha.
Oo. Salamat. Yes, definitely.
I will check on you. Kukulitin kita. Hoy, pag-isipin mo sarili mo muna ha, bago ko
Ah,
maubusan ka niyan.
okay, salamat and good night. God
Good
bless.
night. I'll see you
Alright,
soon. Bye-bye.
alright. Bye-bye.